Protection of buildings, sites, structures, areas, and districts of historic significance and interest through the preservation and enhancement of local historic architectural, archaeological, and aesthetic heritage found in the city, through the maintenance of the distinctive character of the city's historic districts, and through the promotion and enhancement of the city's historic and aesthetic attraction to tourists and visitors. I'd like to say good afternoon to everybody. I'm Richard Bailey, the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'd like to take this opportunity to ask our other commissioners to introduce themselves, and we'll start from my right and the audience left.
Good evening, Mark Hall.
James Long.
Carol King.
Keelan Adams.
Okay, thank you. It's indeed a pleasure to see our other commissioners here this afternoon, and we have some guests here this afternoon also, and in just a few minutes we will hear from some of our guests. I also like to recognize our land use staff, Mr. Warren Adams, Mr. Sean Rose, and Ms. Tanya Ingram, and our technician who keeps us on the air. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for coming out this evening. To our other commissioners, you have in your package the January 9, 2024 minutes of the Historic Preservation Commission. The chair would now entertain a motion for the adoption or addition to the minutes.
I move we accept the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we adopt the minutes as written. Is there any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so very much. We have in our package this afternoon, and we just like to get right into this, the Historic Neighborhood Spotlight, Cottage Hill. And I'd just like to say to our other commissioners, do you have any questions? Is there anything that really knocked you out as you read this? Is there anything you like to see more of, or whatever the case might be? Is there anyone here who does not know where Cottage Hill is located? Everybody knows where Cottage Hill is located? All right, good. So we don't have any questions about what we have written in front of us for the history of Cottage Hill. Okay? We have the good fortune this afternoon to have two residents from Cottage Hill with us tonight. And Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, would you all approach the podium and the microphone? Well, since Mrs. Calloway doesn't want to say anything, Mr. Calloway, would you speak for the family and some of your neighbors? Well, Ms. Laura Calloway, okay, good enough.
Dr. Bailey, I'm sorry, I am from the Garden District.
Garden District.
We were just interested in hearing what y'all might have to say about Cottage Hill. I saw the meeting advertised in the paper.
Okay.
So we thought there might be a presentation about Cottage Hill.
Okay, well, while you're at the microphone, would you make 1 or 2 points about the Garden District for all of us to carry with us for the rest of the year?
Well, all right, I'll be glad to do that. The Garden District is, I think, probably the third oldest, Carol, tell me if I'm wrong, historic designated neighborhood in Montgomery. And our boundaries extend from Arbor Street on the north to Fairview Avenue on the south, and from the middle of South Court Street on the west to the middle of Norman Bridge Road on the east. We are one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Montgomery, both in terms of age, income, and demographics, and we are really excited about that because we have a lot of young people in our neighborhood. We have recently, with the help of a grant from the city, created a website that gives a lot of information about the history of the Garden District. We have done interviews with the help of history PhD candidates from Auburn, and so we've got information on the website about notable properties. We have a lot of great information from some of the first families that integrated the Garden District and their stories of what that was like when they first moved in. Information about some of our significant properties, such as the Bellinger Hill School and the Governor's Mansion. And we are working on having a walking tour that is based on all of that information that's available online. We are having, again, with the help of a grant from the Neighborhood Services, signs with QR codes put up around the neighborhood so that when you take the walking tour, all you have to do is aim your phone at the QR code and it will pull up the part of the website that gives you the history of that piece of property within the Garden District.
Thank you very much. Before you
You're
take your
welcome.
seat,
Thank you.
ma'am, before you take your seat, is there anyone who has a question for Ms. Calloway? Any question about the Garden District? You must have answered all the questions. But I just have one, two, I just like to throw out at you. All of the streets in the Garden District, would you just take one street and give us a feel for whom that street was named, and then just take one historic family from the Garden District and just say one or two things about that family?
Well, I don't really know about any of the streets, but the Bellinger Hill School was named for the Bellinger family.
Yes.
And I do know from our history project that they were some of the initial settlers in Montgomery. They came from South Carolina and set up a plantation where the Bellinger Hill School and the surrounding area are now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Please come again.
And Dr. Bailey,
Yes.
I just wanted to, if I may approach
Sure.
the podium here. So just wanted to kind of go over some of this with the Cottage Hill Historic District.
Sure.
And I do have, since you prompted me to do a neighborhood spotlight each month, the Garden District I think I have coming up in April. So I have one, I believe it's Old Cloverdale for next month. So I'm working on that. But as far as Cottage Hill, this just made sense to me being the oldest historic neighborhood, residential area in Montgomery, aside from the downtown area. It made sense to me to start this neighborhood spotlight series on Cottage Hill. So the boundaries of the neighborhood are as far as the neighborhood itself is named after Cottage Hill School. This is a public school, and the neighborhood overlooks the Alabama River. The boundaries are Clay Street to the north, Goldthwaite Street to the east, Clayton Street to the south, and then North Holt Street to the west. We also have Martha, Hanrick, and Goldthwaite Streets, which are prominent within the neighborhood. And the character of the neighborhood is that of a late Victorian era residential suburb. The lots were platted by land speculator Edward Hanrick in the 1830s, and the area was incorporated into Montgomery in 1839. But the neighborhood was slow to develop, with most residences being built over 40 years between 1870 and 1910. Although there was a preponderance at one time of high-style mansions built in Cottage Hill, including about half a dozen in the Greek Revival and Italianate styles before the Civil War, the neighborhood subsequently became popular among the growing working class of Montgomery in the late 19th century. And many of those high-style mansions were subdivided into smaller apartments for the working class folks that moved into the neighborhood at that time. So many of the other residences were simple and unpretentious wood frame houses built for railway employees, merchants, clerks, carpenters, a gunsmith, blacksmith, and other laborers. By the mid-20th century, Cottage Hill was deteriorating and under threat of being converted into an industrial warehouse complex by the city, and this threat prompted the establishment of the Cottage Hill Foundation. And the neighborhood, numbering approximately 228 properties, was at that time locally designated in 1974. Later, there was an annex southeast of the original district, designated in 1982, which added 38 more properties for a total of about 266. Cottage Hill was also listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1976 as well. And today, ongoing efforts are happening to revitalize the neighborhood The Public House at Hilltop Cafe and Seville at Hilltop Barbershop are situated across from an ongoing Equal Justice Initiative development, and the Cottage Hill Foundation organizes a popular candlelight tour of homes during the holiday season each December. We plan to discuss conducting an architectural inventory with the Cottage Hill Foundation soon, and we also have some photographs. Mike Mann, if you want to just go ahead and we can scroll through some of the photos for our audience members as well. And one of the last photos on here is the Albert Pick Motel, also known as the Capitol Inn. Unfortunately was demolished in 2017, but that was a popular motel as well within the Cottage Hill Historic District there.
I have a question. Looking at your summary there, which is really good, talk about the revitalization efforts going up there, and you mentioned the Equal Justice Initiative. Exactly what are they doing up there?
Yeah, I think there is a plan out there that's been released into the public. I haven't seen a lot of it, so I'm not fully aware of what that is. Warren, do you know more about what that is?
Yeah, the proposal is for a hotel with, I believe, some sort of conference venue across the street from it. Tanya, do you know what stage the plans are at now?
I don't know what the status of the plans are, but there's a bridge going to connect the two structures across Montgomery Street.
Are they working with the district so that the historic properties and that sort of mesh, or are we going to have a lot of parking lots? I mean, exactly what are they doing?
One of the concerns we did raise at the initial plan review was that we wanted to make sure that parking did not spill over from the development into the historic district. So they are aware of that, and they are aware that that's something that we will be watching to make sure that, you know, the residential streets do not become full of cars parked and travelling through there for people who are actually going to the hotel. So that was one of the issues we raised. I believe there's going to be some sort of valley parking and on-street parking, but not within the residential district.
And Mr. Long, they've also restored a Victorian house at the corner of North Goldwaite and Martha. Right, and Martha. And my understanding it's to be it's pretty much finished too. It's supposed to be like a VIP guest house. And then there's also another, what used to be a car lot at Clay and Goldwaite, which I understand is service area for the hotel. You know, it'll be like laundry, all that kind of thing. Just the thing that because there's not that much with the big high-rise itself to service the rooms, that kind of thing. And this would be, it's just across the street and down a little bit, so it would be more service area, offices, stuff like that.
And with regard to the bridge that will connect the two buildings, we did make the National Park Service aware of this because it is the National Historic Trail, but they didn't really seem to have any concerns or comments about it. But yes, we did let them know that was actually in the proposals, and because it's out with our purview because it's outside the historic district, but it is in the National Trail, so we felt that letting the National Park Service know was the correct thing to do, but they didn't provide any comments.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. And before you take your seat, just like to inform you or remind you, if you already knew, Mary Ann Neal and I gave our first tour of Cottage Hill in December 2005. And as a way of promoting the tour, the Montgomery Advertiser had a significant insert in this Sunday edition of that newspaper, focusing on the history of Cottage Hill as well as some of the residences there, et cetera, et cetera. And in later years, when Mary Ann Neely was no longer around, and I continued that tour, several things I pointed out that apparently some people didn't know is that in the 1890s, Cottage Hill was an integrated neighborhood. And the pastor of the church in Cottage Hill actually made, shall we say, a very pointed attempt to let every black resident of Cottage Hill know that he or she was completely welcome at that white church in Cottage Hill. And the point of the matter is, for the 1890s, this goes against the grain, but at the same time, it shows you how progressive Cottage Hill was during those times when nobody basically was talking about an integrated neighborhood, certainly not in the South. But Cottage Hill did, in fact, have what we could call an integrated neighborhood well before, I would say, any neighborhood in Montgomery did so. And for the white pastor of that church in Cottage Hill to go out of his way to invite black residents of Cottage Hill to attend that white church, that was well ahead of its time, if you could say it like that. And I think you mentioned this. For many years, persons who worked for the railroad lived in Cottage Hill. And we don't want to minimize that point, but the bottom line for me, I don't mind saying, is that we have a lot to be proud of when we start talking about Cottage Hill.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I appreciate your context on that. I didn't know that about the integration in 1890.
Surely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, too. All right. As we look again at our agenda, we need to have some members to volunteer. I'm trying to get the agenda back on my screen.
Roll your little thing right here, your rolling thing. There you go.
Page 2.
Take your rolling thing and roll it down. No, on your mouse. On your mouse. On your
Okay.
mouse.
Okay. Yes, need 3 members to form the commemorative sign committee for spring 2024. Can we get 3 members to volunteer for that sign committee? We have 4 with us this evening, so who doesn't want to be on the sign committee? That way we'll know who is on the sign committee. Who is it who does not want to be on the sign committee?
Okay. It's been a year since we did it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think we would run afoul of any rule or regulation if we had 4 members on that sign committee. Is that good enough, everybody? Here this evening to be a part of the sign committee? Okay, good enough. So the 4 members here with us this afternoon will work with us for our sign committee. Discuss potentially showing a documentary on the Todd Road in a partnership with Leadership Montgomery. How do you feel about that? First of all, is anybody who does not know about Todd Road? Okay, everybody. All right. Is there anybody who has any strong feeling, left or right, pro or con, regarding forming that partnership with Leadership Montgomery on Todd Road?
Does the documentary exist, or is this to create a documentary?
Yeah, there is an existing documentary.
There is
So-
an existing documentary, okay?
And book,
And book. Okay, good enough.
Foster Dixon's.
All right. Is there anyone who has any strong feeling, left or right, pro or con, regarding that partnership? Anybody?
That would be good to get out prior to, because like Callaway Harris is, other people might like to come and see it too.
Okay, all right, okay. Now, let me ask this, is anyone here who is not familiar with Leadership Montgomery? So everybody's familiar with Leadership Montgomery. I was a member of Class 2 about 800 years ago. I think they're on Class 40-something.
I was 12 years behind you.
I believe they're on Class 40-something. Well, that goes to show you how long ago that was. But Leadership Montgomery is a first-class organization, and I can tell you from first-hand experience, if Leadership Montgomery is involved, you can expect the best. So not only have I been a member of Leadership Montgomery, I've given tours for Leadership Montgomery, and I've also spoken to sessions of Leadership Montgomery on Montgomery County history. And let me just give you an idea. About 2 years ago, Leadership Montgomery, in fact, 2021, when we rededicated Lincoln Cemetery, a group from Leadership Montgomery volunteered to help us out. And they had a program right here in City Auditorium regarding what Leadership Montgomery did regarding Lincoln Cemetery. And I was standing in the back and I said to one or two of the members of Leadership Montgomery, had I known they were going that far with their efforts to highlight what they had done, I would have gone a step further by saying that when you walk out of City Hall and head east on Monroe Street, you are able to find yourself at the office of the general manager for the cemetery that's immediately south of Lincoln Cemetery. And that's what we try to do, always connecting things. And they were just surprised at that, but as I love to tell people, if we keep talking, we keep communicating, you'd be surprised what would come out in a conversation if you just were to continue to talk. But here again, my bottom line here is that I'm so proud of what Leadership Montgomery does here in Montgomery, and I endorse anything that Leadership Montgomery is part of. So are we going on record now saying we favor the partnership with Leadership Montgomery and showing the documentary on Todd Road?
Yes.
Do we need a vote on that? I don't think we do.
I don't think so.
We don't have to have a vote on that. Okay. So what is our next step?
So we'll be in touch with Lois Cortell and our staff. She reached out to us to prompt this, and so we'll get with her in order to coordinate. And I think maybe April or May, that's probably the meeting where we would have the documentary shown.
Sure, April or May.
Can I suggest that May might be best, because we did receive an email from Christy Anderson at the state, and they have completed a number of nominations for the National Register. Montgomery Civil Rights, Multiple Property Designations, Centennial Hill Historic District, First Baptist on Ripley, and the Moore Building. These are going to be reviewed by the National Register Review Board on April the 25th. And Christy has suggested that because you guys have the option to comment on them, that we have a public meeting at the April meeting where we can possibly invite people from Centennial Hill and First Baptist so that we can review and discuss these nominations. So that may be a fairly lengthy meeting if there's significant discussion on these nominations.
Okay.
That's a good idea. Plus, our sign committee, the signs are usually given out in May. But there's probably, it's not going to take that long, and it would be a nice program, if that makes sense. But it usually takes a few minutes for Dr. Bailey to do the presentations to the different people.
Sure. So we'll coordinate it all so that, we...
Okay. All right. Very good. And let me just say before we close this afternoon, how much we appreciate the narrative on Cottage Hill, first class. And we want to continue to spotlight our neighborhoods here in the city of Montgomery. And we certainly want to make certain that the public is aware of which neighborhood we will spotlight at our meeting. And we want to invite always our neighbors to come out and talk about your neighborhood or talk about the interests you might have in another neighborhood, because you'd be surprised when you start talking about these historic neighborhoods just how rich the history is of these neighborhoods. And that's why we want to spotlight our neighborhoods. Before we close, is there anything else that some of the commissioners want to say? Anybody got anything going on you'd like to bring to our attention?
Yes, sir, I just wanted to say, back to the signs again, they are due, applications are due March the 1st for our consideration, and so we'll send it out to the historic neighborhoods, do their thing. So if you guys get back to the Garden District on that. Also, we have, Landmarks has a renovators open house, which we haven't had in a while. I'll give this to you guys to take back too. It's actually gonna be Thursday, the 29th, so, it's, you know, once in a 4-year chance. It's going to be 108 Bibb Street, which is that little tall, skinny building right behind the Hampton Inn, sort of sandwiched in between parking lots. And it's, Jake Kaiser's going to be our host, and he named the upcoming establishment Jerry's. So it will be the 29th from 5:30 to 7. So come by and see what the Kaisers have done on that particular building.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else has anything going you'd like to bring to our attention? As we close, I'd like to emphasize, as I try to at the close of every meeting, if you know someone who's about to demolish a home, a building, or whatever the case may be, ask them to talk to some of us or someone at the Land Use Division with the City of Montgomery and consider alternatives to demolition. There are alternatives to demolition. You don't have to demolish whatever it might be, and I do want to leave you with this one thought. Once you demolish it, whatever it is you put there might not have the same value of what it, the value of whatever it was that you demolished, okay? Anything else? Again, want to say thank you to Mike Mann for videotaping our session this afternoon, and Mrs. Callaway from the Garden District for coming out, and our members from the Land Use Division for coming out with us this afternoon. Other commissioners, this meeting is hereby adjourned.